February 9, 2026. A courtroom in Hong Kong. A 78-year-old man stands in the center of the room. His name is Jimmy Lai. He was once Hong Kong's most powerful media tycoon. Today, he will spend the rest of his life in prison. 20 years in prison. His crime? Running a free newspaper, talking about democracy, and criticizing China. But this is not just one man's story. This is a city's story. Hong Kong's story. This city, once called the Pearl of Asia, has lost its freedom today. How did this happen? How did everything change so quickly? To understand this question, we need to go back 184 years. To 1842. To the beginning of a war, a treaty, and a tragic journey. Welcome to Hong Kong's 180-year tragic story. Our story begins unexpectedly, with drug trafficking. At the beginning of the 19th century, the British Empire faced a major problem. The trade balance with China was working against the British. The Chinese were selling tea, silk, and porcelain to the world. But they weren't buying anything from Britain. They only wanted silver. The result? Britain's silver reserves were rapidly depleting. The British found a solution: opium. The British East India Company was growing opium in Bengal, India, and they began smuggling this opium into China. Initially, opium was used for medical purposes. But then, the Chinese began smoking opium. And very quickly, an addiction crisis began in China. In 1729, the Chinese emperor issued the first opium ban. 1799, 1814, 1831. Every year, new prohibition decrees. But none worked. Why? Because Chinese officials were taking bribes. Smugglers were getting rich. And the British were multiplying their profits. By 1833, 30,000 chests of opium were entering China annually, meaning 2,310 tons. This destroyed the Chinese economy. Silver was flowing out of the country. The people were addicted. Society was on the verge of collapse. In 1838, Qing dynasty Emperor Daoguang made a decision: enough. He appointed a special commissioner, Lin Zexu. Mission: completely stop the opium trade. Lin Zexu arrived in Guangzhou, Canton, in March 1839, and he took very harsh measures. First, he threatened British merchants: surrender all your opium, or no one can leave. British merchants resisted for 6 weeks. But Lin Zexu did not give up. Finally, £2.6 million, 1,188 tons, of opium were surrendered. What did Lin Zexu do? He destroyed this massive opium stockpile. He hired 500 Chinese workers. They mixed the opium with lime and salt, and dumped it into the sea. The British were shocked. "This was our property," they shouted. "We demand compensation." But Lin Zexu did not listen. Instead, he ordered British ships to leave Chinese waters. British merchants took refuge in the Portuguese island, but the Portuguese did not want them either. Finally, the British moved to a small, deserted island, Hong Kong. In September 1839, tension was at its peak. Drunk sailors from a British ship killed a Chinese villager. Chinese authorities demanded the killers be handed over to them. British Admiral Charles Elliot refused. The result? On September 4, 1839, the first armed conflict began. The First Opium War. The British Royal Navy had state-of-the-art ships and artillery. The Chinese army, however, was using ancient weapons. The outcome was obvious. The British bombarded Canton. They advanced along the Pearl River. They captured Chinese fortresses one by one. The Qing dynasty's army suffered heavy losses. Many Chinese officers committed suicide, unable to accept defeat. On August 29, 1842, the Treaty of Nanking was signed. The terms of the treaty were humiliating for China. 1. Hong Kong Island was ceded to Britain in perpetuity. 2. 5 port cities, Shanghai, Canton, Ningbo, Fuzhou, Xiamen, were opened as treaty ports. 3. China would pay $21 million silver in war reparations. 4. British citizens would have extraterritorial rights on Chinese soil, meaning they would not be subject to Chinese laws. This treaty was the first of the unequal treaties in Chinese history, and Hong Kong's fate was determined that day. When Hong Kong Island came under British control in 1841, it was almost deserted. British Foreign Secretary Lord Palmerston described the island as a barren island without a single house. But the British had seen Hong Kong's strategic value: a perfect harbor, proximity to southern China, an ideal location for trade. When the first British governor, Sir Henry Pottinger, arrived in 1842, there were only a few fishing villages in Hong Kong. Total population, approximately 7,500 people. But within 10 years, everything changed. By 1851, Hong Kong's population had reached 33,000. Why? Because Hong Kong became a city of opportunity. Those fleeing political turmoil in China came. Merchants, bankers, entrepreneurs came. Job seekers, those wanting to build a new life came. And of course, opium smugglers came too. Hong Kong had now become the center of opium trade. Between 1856 and 1860, the Second Opium War, War took place. This time Britain and France attacked China together. The result? New unequal treaties. With the 1860 Beijing Convention, the Kowloon Peninsula was also ceded to Britain. In 1898, the new territories were leased to the British for 99 years. Duration: until July 1, 1997. This 99-year lease agreement would determine Hong Kong's future. Under British rule, Hong Kong developed rapidly. In the 1860s, the first gas lamps. In the 1880s, electricity. In 1888, the Peak Tramway. In 1904, the first tram line. In 1910, the Kowloon Canton Railway. Hong Kong became a bridge between East and West. Chinese goods went to the world from here. Western products went to China from here. But beneath this bright appearance, there were great inequalities. The Chinese were second-class citizens. The best jobs belonged to the British. Native Chinese were mostly workers, servants, or small merchants. Discrimination was everywhere. Some parks were Europeans only. Hotels would not accept Chinese. The Peak area, Victoria Peak, where the wealthy lived, was closed to Chinese. In 1894, a plague epidemic broke out in Hong Kong. Thousands died. Chinese neighborhoods were quarantined. In the 1920s and 30s, due to civil war and Japanese invasion in China, millions of Chinese took refuge in Hong Kong. The population exploded. By 1941, Hong Kong's population had reached 1.6 million. Then, on December 25, 1941, everything changed. The Japanese Empire occupied Hong Kong. December 8, 1941. Just one day after the Pearl Harbor attack. The Japanese army attacked Hong Kong. After 18 days of bloody fighting, on December 25, 1941, on Black Christmas, Hong Kong fell. British Governor Mark Acheson Young surrendered. The Japanese occupation, lasting 3 years and 8 months, was a nightmare for Hong Kong. Approximately 10,000 civilians died. Mass arrests, torture, executions, famine and hunger. Systematic rape of Chinese women, comfort women. Currency devalued, economy collapsed. British civilians and military personnel were held at Stanley Camp. Conditions were terrible. On August 15, 1945, Japan surrendered. World War II ended. Hong Kong returned to British control. But post-war Hong Kong was very different. First, the population had dropped to 600,000. More than half had returned to mainland China or died. Second, the world had changed. The colonial era was ending. Countries in Asia and Africa were gaining independence. Did it make sense for Britain to keep Hong Kong? Yes. Because 1. It had strategic importance. 2. It became a gateway for trade with China. 3. And when the Communist Party came to power in China in 1949, Hong Kong became even more important. In October 1949, Mao Zedong declared the People's Republic of China. Nationalist Kuomintang forces fled to Taiwan. The Communists could have taken Hong Kong too, but they did not. Why? Because Hong Kong was useful to China. A gateway for trade with the West. A source of foreign currency. An intelligence center. Technical knowledge transfer. Mao had a saying, "Let's leave Hong Kong for now. In the future, it will ripen and fall by itself." In the 1950s, a new wave of immigration came to Hong Kong. This time, those fleeing the communist regime. More than 1 million Chinese took refuge in Hong Kong. Among these immigrants were merchants, industrialists, engineers, doctors. They laid the foundation for Hong Kong's economic miracle. In the 1950s, Hong Kong was a poor city. Most people lived in shantytowns. Unemployment was high. The future was uncertain. But within 30 years, Hong Kong became one of the 4 Asian tigers. The others, Singapore, South Korea, Taiwan. How did this transformation happen? First factor, cheap labor. Millions of immigrants were ready to work for low wages. This reduced production costs. Second factor, entrepreneurship. Textile industrialists fleeing Shanghai established factories in Hong Kong. They brought knowledge, capital, and networks. Third factor, free market economy. The British administration followed a minimal intervention policy. Low taxes. Little regulation. Free trade. Hong Kong was a laissez-faire capitalism paradise. Fourth factor, geographic location. Hong Kong was at the center of Asia, a perfect bridge between East and West. In the 1950s, Hong Kong became a textile export center. In the 1960s, toy manufacturing, plastic products, electronics boomed. In the 1970s, the financial sector developed. Hong Kong became Asia's financial center. The result? Between 1960 and 1980, Hong Kong's GDP grew at an average annual rate of 10%. Here are some statistics. In 1960, per capita income, $429. In 1980, per capita income, $5,695. In 1997, per capita income, $27,340. Hong Kong went from poverty to wealth. But this economic success came with social problems. 1. Great inequality, the rich very rich, the poor very poor. 2. Housing crisis, people lived in cage homes. 3. Corruption, police and officials took bribes. 4. Environmental pollution. In 1974, the Independent Commission Against Corruption, ICAC, was established. Harsh measures were taken against corruption. The results were impressive. Hong Kong slowly became a modern, cosmopolitan city. But there was one problem: 1997 was approaching. The 99-year lease term was about to expire. In 1979, Hong Kong Governor Murray MacLehose went to Beijing. He met with Chinese leader Deng Xiaoping. MacLehose was worried. In 1997, the new territory's lease would expire. So what would happen then? Hong Kong Island and Kowloon theoretically belonged to Britain in perpetuity. But without the new territories, Hong Kong could not survive. Water, electricity, food all came from there. MacLehose proposed extending the lease. Deng Xiaoping's answer was clear: no. Hong Kong will return to China. In 1997. But Deng proposed a solution: one country, two systems. This was a radical idea. Hong Kong would be part of China, but it would keep its capitalist system, laws, and freedoms. For 50 years. Until 2047. Britain initially hesitated. But they had no choice. In 1982, British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher went to Beijing. Intensive negotiations with Chinese leaders began. Thatcher tried to protect Hong Kong. But Deng Xiaoping was very determined. At one meeting, Deng said, "We cannot negotiate on sovereignty. Hong Kong is China's. If there is no agreement, we will take it back by military force in 1997. Thatcher was shocked. But she accepted the reality: Britain could not defend Hong Kong. After 2 years of negotiations, on December 19, 1984, the Sino-British Joint Declaration was signed. The main points of the treaty. 1. On July 1, 1997, Hong Kong would be transferred to the People's Republic of China. 2. Hong Kong would become a Special Administrative Region SAR. 3. The one country, two systems principle would be applied. 4. Hong Kong's capitalist system, way of life, and freedoms would remain unchanged for 50 years. 5. The basic law would be Hong Kong's mini-constitution. Deng Xiaoping told the world, "The horse may change, but you don't get off the horse." Meaning, Hong Kong's capitalist system will not change. What did the Hong Kong people think? Mixed feelings. Some were optimistic, maybe things will work out. Some were worried, will the communists restrict freedoms? Some were afraid, remembering Tiananmen. In June 1989, thousands of students in Beijing demanded democracy. On June 4, the Chinese army stormed Tiananmen Square. Thousands died. It had a shocking effect in Hong Kong. 1 million Hong Kongers, 1/6 of the population, took to the streets. They mourned for Tiananmen victims. For the first time, Hong Kong people had become politicized. And for the first time, they asked a real question: can we trust China? The answer would come in 1997. June 30, 1997, evening. At the new wing of the Hong Kong Convention and Exhibition Center, a magnificent ceremony began with world leaders present. Attendees: Prince Charles, on behalf of Queen Elizabeth II. British Prime Minister Tony Blair. Chinese President Jiang Zemin. Chinese Premier Li Peng. Hong Kong's last British Governor Chris Patten. Hong Kong's first SAR Chief Executive Tung Chee-hwa. At 11:42 p.m., Prince Charles gave a speech. "We shall not forget Hong Kong. We shall watch with the closest interest. You should be proud of your political, economic, and social achievements." At 11:59 p.m., the British flag was lowered. 156 years of British rule ended. At midnight, July 1, 1997, the Chinese flag and Hong Kong SAR flag were raised. Officially, Hong Kong was now part of China. At the ceremony, some Hong Kongers cried. Some applauded with joy. Some watched silently. In the outside world, the media asked, "Will Hong Kong's freedoms be preserved?" The first few years passed relatively smoothly. Tung Chee-hwa was a moderate leader from the business world. China did not interfere much with Hong Kong. The economy continued to grow. The media was free. People could protest. In 1998, the Asian financial crisis hit Hong Kong. Property prices collapsed. Unemployment rose. But Hong Kong recovered. Every year on June 4th, tens of thousands gathered at Victoria Park to commemorate the Tiananmen massacre. They lit candles. This could never happen in mainland China. But in Hong Kong, it was legal. In 2003, the government tried to pass a national security law, Article 23. This law would ban actions threatening state security. But Hong Kongers saw this as an attack on freedom of expression. On July 1, 2003, 500,000 people took to the streets. They protested. The result? The law was withdrawn. This showed the power of Hong Kong people. If they organized, they could change the government. But the real test had not yet come. In 2014, a debate erupted in Hong Kong. How should the chief executive be elected? According to the Basic Law, the ultimate aim was full democratic elections. But when? How? On August 31, 2014, China's National People's Congress, NPC, made a decision. In 2017, Hong Kong's chief executive could be elected by the people. But candidates must first be approved by a nominating committee. This committee consisted of 1,200 people, mostly pro-Beijing. And only 2 to 3 candidates would be allowed. Meaning, the people could vote, but only choose from candidates pre-approved by Beijing. This was unacceptable to democracy advocates in Hong Kong. Students decided to protest. On September 22, 2014, students from the University of Hong Kong and the Chinese University began a class boycott. On September 26, Scholarism and the Hong Kong Federation of Students began a sit-in in front of the government building. On the morning of September 28, police sprayed pepper spray at demonstrators. Students, to protect themselves, opened umbrellas. That moment, the umbrella movement was born. That same evening, the Occupy Central with Love and Peace movement launched civil disobedience campaigns. Tens of thousands occupied Hong Kong's main streets. Admiralty, in front of the government building. Causeway Bay. Mong Kok. The city center turned into a giant protest camp. Police fired 87 pepper spray canisters. This was the first time pepper spray had been used since 1997. But the demonstrators did not retreat. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. The protest camps grew. Tents, barricades, artworks, students doing homework. A mini community formed. People shared food, discussed, sang together. Main demands: 1. Full democratic elections. 2. Chief Executive Liang Chunning's resignation. 3. Investigation into police excessive use of force. But the government did not move. Neither did Beijing. For 79 days, Hong Kong's heart was occupied. Initially, 60% of the public supported the protests. But over time, support decreased. People got tired. Businesses were suffering. Traffic was paralyzed. In late November, police began clearance operations. On November 25th to 26th, Mong Kok was cleared. Barricades were removed. Demonstrators were arrested. On December 11th, the last camp in Admiralty was also cleared. The umbrella movement ended. Official result: defeat. The government made no concessions. The electoral system did not change. Leaders were arrested. In 2016, 3 leaders of the umbrella movement, Joshua Wong, Nathan Law, Alex Chow, were sentenced to prison. But the movement changed something in Hong Kong: political consciousness. Especially young people were no longer passive. They were active, organized, determined. And 5 years later, they would return, even stronger. In February 2019, the Hong Kong government proposed a controversial bill, the Extradition Bill. This law would allow the extradition of criminals to mainland China. The government explained the rationale for the law as follows. A Hong Konger killed his girlfriend in Taiwan and fled to Hong Kong. But Hong Kong cannot extradite him to Taiwan. This law will solve the problem. But Hong Kongers saw another danger. If this law passes, the Chinese government could declare Hong Kong dissidents criminals and have them arrested, and take them to mainland China without a fair trial. Human rights activists, journalists, businesspeople, everyone was worried. On June 9, 2019, 1.03 million people took to the streets. It was a peaceful march. White clothing. Silent protest. The government did not listen. On June 12, it announced it would present the law for a second reading. On the morning of June 12, tens of thousands of young people, mostly dressed in black, surrounded the Legislative Council building. Police intervened. Pepper spray. Rubber bullets. Water cannons. But this time, the protesters were also organized. They made strategic moves. The legislative session was cancelled. The law stopped. First victory. On June 16, 2 million people marched. Hong Kong's largest protest in history. Their demands now numbered 5 demands, not one less. 1. Complete withdrawal of the Extradition Bill. 2. Withdrawal of characterization of protests as riots. 3. Release of arrested protesters. 4. Independent investigation of police violence. 5. Full democratic elections. Chief Executive Carrie Lam apologized. But she did not officially withdraw the law. Protests continued. And this time, the strategy was different. In 2014, demonstrators had set up camp in one place. Police surrounded them, eventually cleared them. In 2019, the strategy, be water. Bruce Lee sang, meaning, move fast, gather, disperse, gather elsewhere. When police come, disperse. Demonstrators organized via the Telegram app. Instant coordination. There was no leader. Everyone was equal. Every weekend, protest in a different place. Sometimes peaceful march. Sometimes violent clashes. Demonstrators. black clothing to remain anonymous, gas masks against pepper spray, protective clothing, helmets, laser pointers to blind police cameras, umbrellas, always. On July 1st, some radicals stormed the Legislative Council building. They caused damage inside, wrote graffiti on walls. On the night of July 21st, a turning point occurred. Demonstrators marched to China's liaison office in Hong Kong. Paint was thrown at the building's exterior wall. The Chinese national emblem was defaced. The same night, a strange incident occurred in the Yuen Long district. Men in white t-shirts, suspected to be triad members, entered Yuen Long MTR station. They had sticks. They attacked people inside, protesters, randomly. At least 45 people were injured. Police were absent during the attack. The station was closed. Many suspected the attack was organized by the government and police. This incident further inflamed protests. Now people did not trust the police. Throughout August and September, clashes intensified. Hong Kong airport was occupied, flights cancelled. MTR stations were vandalized. Chinese banks were targeted. Roads were barricaded. Police responded more harshly. Thousands of pepper spray canisters, water cannons, colored water to mock protesters, live ammunition. 3 protesters were shot. Mass arrests. In October, the government issued a mask ban. Covering your face at protests was banned. The reaction? More demonstrators took to the streets. This time all masked. In November, sieges occurred at Chinese University and Polytechnic University campuses. Street battles between students and police. Television broadcast live. The world watched. The U.S. passed the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act, November 27, 2019. This law required Hong Kong's freedoms to be protected. In late November, district council elections were held. Result: pro-democracy candidates won 85% of seats. A tremendous victory. But China was preparing to act. In early 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic hit the world. Protests in Hong Kong also stopped. But Beijing used this opportunity. On May 28, 2020, China's National People's Congress passed a new law for Hong Kong. Hong Kong National Security Law. The law was drafted by Beijing without consulting Hong Kong. It was directly implemented. On June 30, 2020, at midnight, the law came into effect. The law's content. 4 main crimes were defined. 1. Secession, advocating Hong Kong's separation from China. 2. Subversion, trying to undermine the Chinese government. 3. Terrorism, using or threatening violence. 4. Collusion with foreign forces, acting against China with foreign countries. Penalties: from 10 years in prison to life imprisonment. Critical provisions of the law. Hong Kong police could make arrests without a court order. Trials could be conducted without a jury, judges selected by government. China's National Security Bureau could open an office in Hong Kong. Some cases could be tried directly in mainland China. The law could be applied retroactively, i.e., could cover actions before it came into force. On July 1, 2020, the first arrests began. Protesters were arrested for carrying banners saying Hong Kong independence and overthrow the Chinese Communist Party. Result: 370 arrests on the first day alone. Pro-democracy parties and activist groups dissolved themselves. Demosisto, Joshua Wong's party, dissolved. Hong Kong Independence Union banned. Professional Democratic Youth Alliance dissolved. Why? Because under the national security law, their existence was a crime. In August 2020, the biggest arrests came. Jimmy Lai, founder of Apple Daily newspaper, was arrested. Apple Daily was Hong Kong's largest pro-democracy newspaper. It had been publishing since 1995. It harshly criticized the Chinese government. Police raided the newspaper's office. 200 police. Computers were seized. Jimmy Lai was arrested on charges of collusion with foreign forces. Evidence of the crime? Meeting with American politicians. Following foreign politicians on Twitter. In June 2021, police froze Apple Daily's assets. Result: the newspaper became financially unable to operate. On June 24, 2021, Apple Daily printed its last issue. It sold 1 million copies. On the cover, Hong Kongers hang in there. The next day, Apple Daily became history. A 26-year struggle ended. Throughout 2021, arrests continued. 47 democracy activists were arrested on charges of subverting the electoral system. Their crime? Participating in primaries in 2020. Tiananmen Commemoration Organization leaders were arrested. The organization was closed. Student unions were dissolved. The University of Hong Kong removed the Tiananmen Massacre Monument, pillar of shame sculpture, from campus. The annual June 4 Tiananmen Commemoration Ceremony was banned. The electoral system was also changed. In 2021, Beijing rewrote Hong Kong's electoral laws. New rule: only patriotic candidates could participate in elections. Definition of patriotic? Respecting the Chinese Communist Party. Result: opposition candidates were unable to enter elections. In the December 2021 elections, turnout dropped to 30%, normally 60 to 70%. Why? Because people thought elections no longer had meaning. After Jimmy Lai was arrested in August 2020, he remained in prison for 5 years. Most of the time, in solitary confinement. 23 hours alone. His health deteriorated. Heart palpitations. High blood pressure. Diabetes. His family could not visit. His lawyers had limited access. In December 2023, the trial finally began. But this was not a normal trial. There was no jury. 3 judges, all selected by the government. The trial lasted 156 days, the longest case in Hong Kong history. Jimmy Lai testified for 52 days to make his own defense. Charges: 1. Collusion with foreign forces, 2 separate charges. 2. Publishing seditious materials. Prosecutors presented the following evidence. Articles published in Apple Daily, criticizing China. Jimmy Lai's 2019 meetings with U.S. Vice President Mike Pence and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Twitter posts. Following foreign politicians. Jimmy Lai's defense. I am a journalist. I exercised my freedom of expression. I never called for violence. I never asked for international sanctions to change the Chinese government. I just wanted to make the voice of Hong Kong people heard. In December 2024, the verdict was delivered. Guilty. Found guilty on 2 counts of foreign collusion and 1 count of seditious publication. February 9, 2026, sentencing day. The judges announced the decision. 20 years in prison. The harshest sentence under the national security law. The judges explained the rationale for the decision. Jimmy Lai is the mastermind of the conspiracy. He asked foreign countries to impose sanctions, blockades, and act hostile against Hong Kong and China. His crime is serious and grave. Jimmy Lai is 78 years old. A 20-year sentence means he will remain in prison until the end of his life. His son Sebastian Lai reacted from London. This sentence is cruel. My father is a political prisoner. His health is poor. He could die in prison. The British government should show action, not just words. My father's release should be a condition of close relations with China. International reactions. U.S. President Donald Trump: I feel very sad for Jimmy Lai. I talked to Chinese President Xi Jinping, asked for his release. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer: Jimmy Lai is a British citizen. He was punished for exercising freedom of expression. We demand his release. European Parliament: Jimmy Lai's conviction is the end of press freedom in Hong Kong. We strongly condemn it. Amnesty International: Jimmy Lai is a prisoner of conscience. He should not be in prison for even a single day. But the Chinese government is determined. Hong Kong leader John Lee: the decision defends the rule of law. Jimmy Lai's crimes are heinous and can never be forgiven. China's Foreign Ministry: Hong Kong is China's internal affair. Foreign countries cannot interfere. February 2026. Hong Kong is still shining. Skyscrapers, neon lights, luxury stores. But the soul has changed. In Press Freedom Rankings, Hong Kong, 2002, 18th place. 2020, 80th place. 2022, 148th place. 2024, 140th place. Still declining. Independent media, almost non-existent. Apple Daily closed. Stand News, closed. Citizen News, voluntarily closed. Hong Kong Free Press struggling. Dissident voices, silenced. Joshua Wong in prison. Agnes Chow in exile, Canada. Nathan Law in exile, UK. Ted Hui in exile, Australia. Jimmy Lai 20 years in prison. Civil society organizations. Hong Kong Professional Teachers Union dissolved. Civil Human Rights Front dissolved. Hong Kong Alliance dissolved. Elections. No real opposition anymore. Only patriotic candidates. Protests. Banned. Because of the national security law, even protesting is risky. People are afraid. Afraid to make political posts on social media. Speak carefully in WhatsApp groups. Use VPN, fear of being monitored. Tell children stay away from politics. Migration wave. Between 2019 to 2024, approximately 500,000 Hong Kongers left the country. Destinations: UK, with BNO visa. Canada. Australia. USA. Taiwan. Why are they leaving? We are no longer free. My children have no future here. Hong Kong is not the same anymore. But at the same time, many people are staying. Why? This is my home. I don't want to leave. Maybe one day it will change. I will continue to struggle. Economy. Hong Kong is still a financial center, but it has lost prestige. International companies are hesitant. Confidence in the rule of law has decreased. Political risk has increased. Some companies have moved headquarters to Singapore. Integration with China. Beijing wants to integrate Hong Kong more with the mainland. Greater Bay Area Project, Hong Kong, Shenzhen, Guangzhou Economic Integration. Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. South China Railway connections. Goal: to make Hong Kong just another Chinese city. The promise of one country, two systems. With the 2020 National Security Law, it effectively ended. There are no longer two systems. There is only one system, the Chinese system. No need to wait until 2047. The change has already happened. 180 years ago, in 1842, Hong Kong was given to Britain in perpetuity. 156 years later, in 1997, Hong Kong returned to China. The promise of one country, two systems was made. A guarantee of freedom for 50 years. But only 23 years later, in 2020, freedoms ended. This is Hong Kong's tragic story. One city, two wars, three administrations, four protest movements, and millions of lives. Today, Jimmy Lai is in prison. Apple Daily is gone. Umbrellas are hidden. Tiananmen candles are extinguished. But the story is not over. Because Hong Kongers do not forget. Exiled activists continue to struggle. The world is watching. And maybe one day, maybe in 2047, maybe before, maybe after, Hong Kong will be free again. Until that day, we remember. What was Hong Kong? The answer. Hong Kong was a dream, where East and West met. Asia's fortress of capitalism and freedom. The city where brave people stood against silent authority. And although that dream has faded today, the dream has not completely died, because the spirit of Hong Kong still lives. In exiled journalists. In imprisoned activists. In young people taking to the streets. And one day, that spirit will rise again. Until that day, we do not forget Hong Kong. And we do not give up the struggle for freedom.